Guys, I want to thank you for getting this video series. This will be going over what to do to get your first job, and I hope this can help you as you grow. This is my contact information, so after you watch this video, if you've got any questions or any concerns, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me through Twitter, you can reach out to me through my website, or you can call me on my cell. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in. This course is going to go through the different parts that come out of my book, find a way what I wish I had known when I became a head football coach, and kind of go through and more in detail the elements that will help you in your journey as you try to become a head football coach, and they can keep you successful when you finally do get that job. So this first section, we're going to be dealing with getting the job, and a lot of young guys out there that are looking for their first opportunity to be a head coach, or maybe not as young guys that are looking for a way to be a head coach. And a lot of times it's not the most qualified guy who gets that, but it's the guy who understands kind of how the game is played. And so in this section, I'm going to go through several different parts to get the job. We're going to deal with how to form relationships, which is the number one thing you've got to have to move anywhere at anything, but especially in the job world. Also going to deal with how to use social media to your benefit, something I've had to really work on because I'm not very good at it. Going to talk about learning how to brand or market yourself. Everything in life is about that, and understanding how to do that is important. We're going to talk about how to build your portfolio, how to make yourself look even better on paper than you might be in real life without lying. We're not going to be unethical, but how to make yourself look as good as possible so that you get those interviews you're wanting to get and get your foot in the door. Going to work on several things inside the portfolio, like having a plan of action once you get the job, having a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day plan, and being able to communicate that with potential employers of what you're going to do. Going to work a little bit on interview skills, things that are going to help you get a job. When you're interviewing for a head football coach, a lot of times it's not so much about the football it's the way you're able to articulate who you are and how you're going to influence kids. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Talk about the stuff you need to know before the interview, things you can do before the interview to help yourself out through that process. And then what you can do after the interview, what you can do after you leave that may help you get that job. Also going to talk about things like how to dress for an interview. Just the little things that we were never taught as we went into the football world that will help you down the road if you're looking to be a head coach. So that's what this course will go through. I'll spend 5-10 minutes on each one of these, and hopefully it'll give you a little bit of insight onto what to do as you strive for your first job. Okay, guys, so again, I'm going to go through several sections on this as to how to get your first job as a head football coach that may help you along the way. The first one is getting your foot in the door. So this section is going to talk about relationship building and the things you can do to get those jobs. More than likely, if it's your first opportunity to be a head coach, you don't have a lot of people that can help get you in the door, but you probably have a few people you've worked with who know someone who might know someone who might know someone who can get you through to get you at least in the door for an interview. I can tell you right now, if you send out resumes and portfolio information and you do that kind of cold without making any calls or any friend of a friend asking a friend, the odds of you actually getting an interview are slim. And the jobs that you do get an interview for are probably not the most appealing jobs. And so some of the different ways you can go about it would be to call somebody that knows the athletic director or the superintendent or somebody on the board or some way with that school who knows you, who knows what you're about, and would give you a good reference. You want to make sure that you've got a very good relationship with that person, and that person's in good standing also with that school. You don't want to call somebody who left on bad terms, or you don't want to call somebody who maybe you don't know as well, but somebody who knows someone at the school who can give you a reference before you send any information in. So kind of a subtle way to do that would be to talk to somebody who knows someone at the school, engage their interest in you, and then your interest in them before you send any information to anybody. That way you kind of back yourself if they call you for a job, that you've been called by them, there's interest in them, you're not wasting your time or their time, and you know that at least you're going to have a fair opportunity to speak to them. But sending in cold resumes and just applying online without making any behind the scenes calls is going to be a very low success rate, and those jobs are going to be very difficult to get. So I would obviously recommend before you even send in things that you've talked to whoever's going to be doing the hiring. And usually that can be difficult. And so you've got to really work the phones to find out who's there and who you know, who can get you in front of that person before you just waste your time building up a huge portfolio and sending it in. Because to me, if I'm going to apply for somewhere or interview somewhere, I'm going to spend a lot of time preparing my portfolio to look exactly how I want it. And I don't want to do that if I don't know if there's mutual interest there. And usually the way you get mutual interest is somebody knows somebody. It's all about relationships. And if you don't play those cards correctly, you're not going to have a lot of interviews. And the ones you do have, sometimes maybe courtesy interviews, or again, it's a job you probably don't want if you're getting in front of them without having to do any work. So always relationships. Whenever you're looking for a job, always who do you know that can help you advance yourself. All right, so the next thing you want to work on when you're going in for an interview is what I would call your portfolio. You know, what is going to make you look good when you walk into an interview. There's a lot of resources out there that you can use, but there are a few things that I would say are non-negotiables when you're walking into an interview. One, and this is probably what is going to get you the interview, is you need to have an extremely professional looking resume, extremely professional looking cover letter that needs to be detailed towards the school you're going to. So your resume can be relatively generic because it's just telling who you are and where you've been. You may want to tweak a few things, or you may want to add another reference that's from that area that may make it stand out more to the whoever's going to be doing the hiring. But your resume can be relatively generic. It's going to be your kind of who you are. I have a bio page that I do as well, which is just something that's basically my resume put in paragraph form that I've written about myself. So if I go speak somewhere or I go interview somewhere, that's included inside of that. You want to make sure anything you're doing other than your resume or your bio page, so anything else I'm about to talk about, is extremely that you fix it to where the school you're going to thinks it's directly for them. So if you go in and interview at, Joe Montana University, then everything else after your resume and your bio page need to have their logo on it, need to be specific to that school. So if you put down, like I come in with a cover letter, so the cover letter, it talks about who I am, kind of has my bio stuff in it, talks about aspirations that I would like going forward, and then I'm going to make sure there's at least 2 or 3 parts in there that are specific to the school that I'm going to interview at. You also need to do a few different things that talk about your vision. So I do a PowerPoint, which is probably the easiest way. And so that PowerPoint, I just talk about what I consider the keys to being a successful coach, and I lay out what I've done at past schools. And then if you're new, you could put in there what you would want to do when you go, or what you have seen that is done and has been successful. And inside of that, keys to a successful program, I'm going to list a lot of things like off the field, which stands out to admin. I'm going to list a lot of things about grades, which stands out to admin. I'm going to list my philosophy on discipline, which stands out. You want to talk about the things that they want to hear. Most admin are not going to ask you if you want to run the spread or the flexbone. The reality is they don't really care. If they do care, you may have bigger issues than just the interview process here. But they want to know how you're going to treat kids, what you're going to do to grow young men, what are you going to do for off the field issues. So inside of that, you want to include how you're going to deal with parents, how you're going to communicate with parents. What are you going to do if some issue comes up in the season? They want to know how you're going to handle all of the things that a head coach has to do. So I put that inside that PowerPoint, and inside that PowerPoint, we're going to make sure their logo is in there, their colors are in there, everything that makes it look very unique to them is in there. The reality is you've only changed a few little things, but the little things you change make it look very unique to the school you're going into. I also include a 30, 60, 90-day packet that I'm going to talk about in another session here, but basically it's what you're going to do 30 days in, 60 days in, 90 days in, anything you can do to make yourself look organized. I bring other materials with me since I've been a head coach. So I bring like our coach's manual and our expectations that I have of our coaches. And again, I'm going to tweak that so it's unique to the school I'm going to. If they only have 8 coaches, you don't want a coach's manual with 15 because you don't want them to think, well, this guy won't know how to work with what we've got. Or if you're going to a bigger school that has 30 coaches or so, you don't want to have 4 coaches on there. You want to make sure they understand you have a rough idea of how many coaches you're going to have and how you plan to use them. But the more information you can give them and the organized, one, it makes you better because you're going to be more organized, but it also helps you come across as you are organized and you do know what you're doing. And so the more you can put in that portfolio, the better. Reference sheet would be great, and especially if you can make it unique to that school. People that either know somebody there, and usually I've already had those people make calls. And so, it's something that you just kind of throw in as well. You can bring what your belief system is, offense and defense and special teams. So if you want to bring that or in the weight room, bring that stuff, that's awesome. But the more you bring, it needs to be branded towards them. And most are not going to be interested in your X and O type deals. They're going to be interested in how you're going to handle yourself. So as you come in on that portfolio, make sure you've got the necessities they're going to want. But more importantly, make sure it's specific to them. Nothing is more annoying for a school to get the fact that you obviously are interviewing at multiple places because you may have messed up and left an old school on there. And so you want to make sure they understand. So you're going to take time to make sure this is done directly for them so they feel special. Because the reality is you're wanting a job from them. It may be one of the most high profile hires they make in several years, you hope. And so you want to make sure that they understand you've put the time into them so that you can have a great opportunity to get that job. Okay, so here's a few examples of things I keep in my portfolio. So I do a keys to successful football program, PowerPoint. I've got a coach's manual that I share with the people I enter. I give them a game plan of something I'm going to do or I have done, and then I tell them about how I plan to fundraise for my program. It helps a lot for the admin to see. All right, so in this section, we're going to talk about how to use social media to your advantage. And realize you're talking to a pretty much 40-year-old here that I'm not very technologically savvy. So the excuse of you don't know how to make it work doesn't work with me because I didn't know, and I realized what kind of tool it would be, and I started letting it work for me. So if you're on Facebook and you've got a Facebook account, that's awesome. But the place where most interactions that I have seen in this world, football world, exists is on Twitter. So if you're not on Twitter, I would highly recommend you get on there. One, there's a lot of free resources out there for you, but it's also a way for you to kind of brand yourself as to what you are. It's a very easy platform to use. I use mine as almost a business type platform, but it's a way for me to put out resources. It's a way for me to network with other people, kind of going back to our relationship business. More doors have been opened to me through that one app than in probably 20 years of coaching without being on there. So it's a way for you to reach out to other people, for them to see who you are. More people know who I am as I travel through Twitter than without that. And so locally, obviously, they know who you are and they know the real person who you are. But learning how to use social media as a tool to kind of brand yourself in the way you want to be seen is extremely important. It's also very important for you to understand that anything you put on social media can and will be used against you in an interview or anywhere you go. And so you always want to make sure you're never putting things out there that are negative. You're never putting things out there because you're upset or angry. You're never putting anything out there that's going to embarrass you. I don't use it for politics. The way I look at it is Republicans and Democrats hire coaches. And so I don't ever want to put anything out there that's going to alienate one side or the other. I may have a personal account somewhere else, but if you're using this to brand yourself and to grow yourself, you want to include as many people as you can inside of this. Just understanding that social media is an extremely powerful tool, and to me, it has opened doors, but it can very easily close doors if you're not very careful of what you're putting out there. It's also an easy way for you to reach out and to network with other coaches, network with administrators, network with people that can help you in areas you may be deficient. I'm not very good at technology, and so I've been able to network through several people through social media who have kind of helped me and mentored me in some of those roles. So it can help you as a person as well as maybe get your foot in the door for a job. I've had a lot of job opportunities come my way recently. I've had several that have come through, and I think Twitter may be a big part of that as just something that I've been able to do. But there's lots of forms of social media. That's my preferred method. Facebook could be your preferred method. You could use LinkedIn. There's lots of different ways you can brand yourself. But if you're not using social media, then you're probably going to struggle when you get into this new world that we're kind of coming into, not only to get a job, which is the goal of this session, but also to promote your program once you get a job. It's a good way for you to network with other coaches, with other people, but it's also a great way for you to promote your program and to promote you and your brand. Because whatever we say as coaches, we're always selling who we are, and we're always convincing people to believe in us. And what you put out there on social media is a powerful tool for or against you. And I promise you're being branded one way or another, whether you're intentionally doing it or you're not and allowing other people to do it for you. All right, guys, the next section we're going to talk today about branding yourself and understanding how to kind of market yourself. I grew up, was going to be a business marketing. That's kind of the area I came from, and love sports too much and love kids too much to go that route. But there's a lot of principles inside of marketing and understanding how that works that will help you in this world. It's always important wherever you go that you brand the school how you want it to be branded, and you brand yourself how you want to be branded. And so, people know me as find a way guy. That's who I am. That's kind of the motto I've adapted and went with. I've seen other mottos be the best, play by play. There's whatever you want to make it, but you want to brand who you are. So when you go to a new place, that's kind of what they know you for. And if you're not being very careful with how you market yourself, then you're falling behind because we are here to coach and we are here to win games. We're here to influence kids, and that's my number one goal. And it should be your number one goal if you're in this job. But if you aren't marketing yourself and you aren't kind of branding yourself, then you're going to struggle. Guys will pass you that understand kind of how the game works and understand how you need to be able to market who you are and what you're about, and have a very clear set of this is who I am. When you go into an interview, or before you even get an interview, or even after the interview and you have the job, you need to be very aware of who you are, very aware of maybe deficiencies or things you struggle with, but also very aware of what you're strong at. And that way you can always market yourself, always can play up your strengths, and I always find people to hide my areas of deficiency. Go find somebody to maybe help me with technology, or find somebody to help me with making sure that my graphics look well. But always be aware that whatever you put out there is what people will brand you at. So whenever you do something, it needs to always be done intentionally. If you're using social media, or if you're using just old print and old whatever, when you put things on the table or you put things out there for the public to see, you need to be aware that that's going to be a brand for you, and do it intentionally. Make sure that you understand kind of how people will view you and how people will view that. A lot of times if you put out something, there's a misspelled something in it, or you put something out, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't matter how great the content might be. You need to make sure you're doing it so that it is appealing to people. And so if that's not something you're good at, there's a lot of people out there that can help you in that world. But knowing how to brand yourself and how to market yourself is important, not only to get a job, but it's also important once you're on the job to market your program, to promote your program. And people are going to want to know that in an interview room is how are you going to recruit kids out of the halls into your school? Well, you need to have a plan of action of how we're going to brand our program, what we're going to be about, what's going to make kids want to be here. And there's a million different ways you can do that. So you need to be you and be genuine, but you also need to be the best version of yourself, genuine. And so you're always wanting to be aware of areas that you need to work on. So anyway, this section is all about branding yourself or knowing who you are, and there's lots of different ways you can do that. And here's a few examples of the ways that I've managed to brand myself. Find a way has been something I've adopted, so I try to put it on as many things as possible. Here it is again on the title slide. Any way you can brand yourself and make people recognize you with some type of slogan is going to further your career. Okay, so in this section, I'm going to talk about what a 30, 60, and 90-day plan are. It's something that's become more commonplace. It used to not be that way when you would go into an interview, and it still can really set you apart from other people that are interviewing for a job. But essentially, you're telling the people that you're interviewing with, what are you going to do the first 30 days on the job, the next 30 days on the job, and the next 30 days on the job. So it's a 30, 60, 90 day or a 1, 2, 3 month plan. Hey, if you hire me, here is my plan of action. And one, it makes you look extremely organized, which you need to be. If you're, as a recommendation as a head coach, you need to be extremely organized. These are things that you've already thought out. The other part about this is you do need to make it unique to the school you're going to. And so you may be going to a school that has phenomenal facilities. Well, that's something you may not have to include in this. You may be going to a school that does not have that. And so that's something you're going to want to include in there. You may be walking into a school where you can hire an entire staff. So you need to have that plan inside of this. You may be walking into a school where you're going to get what you get. And so how are you going to work with those guys? So what I'm going to tell you right now is what a general plan would look like, but you need to tweak it to the school you're going into, the situation you're going to walk into, which requires a little bit of work on your part. But you can have a general 30, 60, 90-day plan and then make subtle tweaks as you apply for different jobs. So something that can be easily done. Again, you want to make sure this has their logo, this has their colors, this is unique to the school you're going into. Hit that in the previous session. But here's what I put in my 30-day plan. You're going to need to meet with the following people and things you need to do inside of that. I'm going to meet with the administration and make sure they understand, the ones that weren't in the interview process, but the administration, they understand the goals of my program, what my mission statement is, my philosophy in coaching, how I want to treat kids, how I want them to treat me. And then look at what the calendar looks like for the rest of the school year, if you get hired in the middle of the year or next year or the summer, and kind of get with them and say, here's what my plan is. How do I need to handle this with a calendar? And then talk to them about potential discipline issues or kids that are struggling in the classroom and try to get out ahead of that so that it doesn't kind of come back to bite you. You need to meet with assistant coaches. You're going to need to evaluate them on what you think they did last year. Is this somebody you can use moving forward? How are you going to use them moving forward? Where are you going to put them? What are you going to do with them? What are their strengths and weaknesses? So that's going to take some time, but you're going to put that in your 30-day plan because that needs to be done pretty quickly as you move forward. You're going to meet with each player one-on-one. That's a non-negotiable. You need to meet with each player. Inside of that, you'll need to have questions you're going to ask. And so it can be unique to whatever you would like it to be. But generally, I'm going to talk to them about what are their future goals. What did they struggle with last year? How do they learn best? Okay. And I generally will phrase some questions to get the answer I want, but usually it's, do you want me to push you to be better? And when they agree to that, they've kind of signed over the fact that here I go. And we'll talk about their grades. We'll talk about their future plans after football, after high school, how I can help them with that. And we'll talk about anything I might need to be aware of, family situation wise, or anything like that. So all of that stuff gets done player by player, and that's going to take a while. You need to meet with your stakeholders or boosters or people that are going to be heavily involved in your program, and discuss with them what your vision is down the road. What do I want to do for facilities, uniforms? What are our needs that we have? What do they see as needs? So talk to them and get their opinion. People will respect you if you listen to them. You don't have to do everything they want, but you need to listen to them. They've been there longer than you have. You're walking into a new situation. So, but you also need to talk about how you would like to work fundraising, what your plan is for the facilities, and get them on board, because a lot of times they can help you a big way in that. You need to have a parent meeting inside your first 30 days. You need to meet with your parents and explain who you are, your philosophy, your vision, what your view is of each player, how you're going to care for those guys, what you're going to push them, and how you want to be on the same team with the parent. Come with me with your issues. We're not going to talk about playing time, but if you want to talk to me about other issues your son is experiencing, we're on a team. We're together. We're both trying to raise your son to be the best person he can be. Talk about communication. How's that going to work? How are you going to share things with them? Are you going to do Remind 101, Facebook, Twitter? Are you going to do email? How are you going to communicate with them? What's your emergency action plan? What are your safety issues? How are you going to keep their kids safe? How are you going to handle when they have a problem with whatever it is? So you need to go through all of those things in your parent meeting right up front. This is the honeymoon period where right now you've not lost a game. So get everything out up front, because this is your chance to make sure you set the precedent. You need to begin the process. The next thing you got to do is begin the process of branding your team. And so you want to use social media as much as you can. You want to make sure you find a good graphic designer. What's an untouchable? Are you at a school that's had the same logo for 70 years? Don't mess up and do something with that. But if you're at a new place and you can change a few things just to make it look a little different, a little fresher, a little newer, maybe you have to go paint. Well, pick up a paintbrush and start painting. Maybe you've got to go clean out something in the field house. Well, go do it. Set the work ethic by yourself. Show people I'm willing to put in the work. So when I go ask you to work, you'll help. Get graphics everywhere. Get your slogan everywhere, whatever it's going to be. Get shirts to the kids. Try to work with hype videos or anything you can do to begin branding the team and how you want them to be. If you're going to a situation where they've struggled, you need to rejuvenate that energy. If you're stepping in behind a successful coach, you still need to make it your own and make sure the kids understand, hey, we respect what's going on, but I'm not him. I'm not going to try to be him. Here's what I want to be. Okay. You also need to look at the budget. That's not fun. Budget and inventory are not fun, but they've got to be done inside the first 30 days. If you don't do them inside the first 30 days, you will not get those things done. Okay. So those are your things you have to do. You've also got to evaluate your coaches once you've met with them. Which guys are you going to reassign? Where are you going to move them? What are you going to do with them? Do you have the opportunity to bring in people? So you need to have all that stuff kind of moving towards in the first 30 days. You need to get a schedule out to your players as soon as possible. Summer events, fall events. That way they understand your expectations on where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be. That needs to be given out at your parent meeting as well. So all of them understand what's going on. So all that stuff's got to be done inside your first 30 days. Here's just an example of a template I've put together. You can get the whole thing on my website, or just pause this and take it off of this. This is our 30-day plan. What you try to do in the first 30 days on the job, something to include in your portfolio, and maybe it'll help you. Do make sure you tweak this to the job you're applying for. Inside of your first 60 days, you need to start sharing your vision. Now you've had a month to be on the job. So what is my 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year plan for our facilities? What do I want it to look like? And how am I going to make that happen? And so I do a lot of things on fundraising. You can go on my website and get a lot of stuff off of that. And I think we're going to cover a little bit of that later on in this course. But you need to have a plan of action of what you want it to look like, prioritized. You've already met with your boosters and your stakeholders. You've got their opinion. You've met with your admin. You've got their opinion. Now you need to come up with a plan of action and start sharing that vision. It lets people understand what you want to do facility wise and uniform wise and whatever equipment wise over the next, if you're there for a decade, over the next decade, if you're there for 2 years, the next 2 years, whatever it is, they now know what you're trying to do. You need to grow your in-house coaching staff if you've got to keep them. So if you're in a state where you're going to keep your in-house coaching staff, you need to really work with them on grooming them on what you want to do. I do a coach's manual and I go through and I'm pretty in detail what we're going to do. And then with my coaching staff, we start to build our own drill book and walk through one-on-one meetings with these guys about drills they're comfortable with, drills I'm comfortable with, drills that I want done, how I want them done. The more specific, the better. But you also want to allow your coaches to grow, which means you've got to give them a little bit of freedom. It's hard when you're first there because you don't know who you can trust, but you got to slowly start working that. Do some in-house coaching clinics. If you can't afford to go somewhere, bring someone in. If you can't afford to bring somebody in, you do it. But you need to start teaching your coaches what you expect because they're the extension of you. Otherwise, you're going to have a coaching staff of one. So inside the first 60 days, you have to do that. Weight room. You need to have your weight room implemented. If you don't have it done in the first 30 days, by the first 60 days, it needs to be done and done exactly how you want it done. Always easier to slow off later, slack off later, or to hand it off to somebody later. Generally, it's good early on for you to do it exactly how you want it, and then teach some other coach if you're going to hand it off, or bring in a strength guy, or however you're going to do that. But the weight room's got to be done correctly. You should have already met with each of your players. By this point, they should have a goal sheet. So you've met with them and heard their dreams. You now are going to share how they're going to get there. So here's your goal sheet. What are you going to do on the field, off the field to get where you want to get? They need to have knowledge of areas they've got to improve. You know, if you want to get where you want to get, here's how you have to improve. It doesn't need to be an ugly meeting, but it needs to be a realistic meeting. And then the understanding of your expectations. Your players need to understand what you expect and understand as an old coach, what you don't address, you do address. So make sure when you're first out there, you're addressing that. This is in your 60-day plan. Then you're going to preview all the opponents you're going to play. So everybody we're going to play, we're going to look at what they're going to do inside the first 60 days. And we're going to start working our schemes. So what are our schemes going to be? And then finally, inside the first 60 days, you probably need to go ahead and start ordering uniforms or equipment if you haven't already done so. This again is your honeymoon period. You're undefeated right now at this school. So right now is your chance to get everything you want to get. And depending on how the season goes, you may not get that chance again. So order as much as you can up front that they're going to let you do. And here's the 60-day plan. Got a little more detail on it. I've mentioned all the things in the presentation before, but here's the hard copy of it. Something, again, I'll take with me. And again, don't forget you want to brand this exactly to the program you're trying to go into, get the job from. So the last part is the 90-day plan. So in 90 days, here's what you want to have done. And this is in my sheet. And again, you can tweak this to your sheet. Okay. I want to have my players in positions by this point. I want to know where they're going to be. I've had now 2 months to evaluate them, kind of where they're going to be. Okay. My coaching staff, I want it finalized or as close to finalized as can be. At least have my coordinators in place and most of my varsity coaches, head junior high coach, strength coach, all that needs to be finalized or very close to being finalized. Okay. I want to make sure I've begun my first fundraiser. Whatever you choose to do on that, and I've got a lot of personal opinions on that, but whatever you're going to do, now's the hype season. Everybody's buying in. Again, we're kind of in the honeymoon period. Now's your chance. It's fresh. It's new. You've shared the vision at 60 days. Now let's get to work in 90 days. Okay. And then you need to have your schedule done for the next couple of years. You know, with realignment and stuff, it can be tough, but you need to go ahead and have that done and out of your way before you kind of get into the meat of football season. Then offensively, defensively, special teams, you need to have already got at least your base stuff installed. Your base is installed, or your kids know we're going to be a 3-4, 4-3, or we're going to be shotgun, or we're going to be under center, or we're going to be whatever. That needs to kind of already be done with your kids by 90 days. So all of this stuff's going to go in your packet. Your 30-day, your 60-day, your 90-day plan, you're going to hand it to them. One, it will help you because they know on the front end what you're wanting to do. And two, it will help you if you do get this job of actually having a real plan once you get the job. And then here is the 90-day plan. I usually put this all together in a folder. So it's a 30-day, a 60-day, and a 90-day. This is the 90-day sheet that I'll take with me when I go to interview. All right, so this section is all about before you actually walk in the interview. So before you walk in an interview for a head football coaching position, just like anything else, you've got to practice and prepare for what the interview is going to be. And so you need to understand the type of questions you're going to get. There are a lot of general questions most coaches get when they walk in. Your weaknesses, your strengths, how are you going to relate to kids? There's a million different websites you can go on and practice as many questions as you can. But here's the reality. When you walk in there and your heart's pumping, you're going to forget a lot of that. So my recommendation for you would be to take a breath. Don't feel rushed. Also, don't feel like you have to keep talking to fill dead space. Once you've given the answer you think you want to give and portray it as, sit there and take a minute. If you get a question you weren't expecting, repeat the question so you can process and don't just shoot the first thing out of your mouth. Take a minute because you want to make sure that your answers are something you want to live by. You know, some guys are very, very good natural interviewers. That's awesome for them. And then there's the rest of us that really have to kind of work at this. So make sure you're practicing what you're going to get. You also want to do as much research as possible about the school you're going into. What do you need to know about them? What was their record last year? Why did they struggle last year? Make some phone calls. Call coaches that are in the conference they were in so you can understand what they struggled with. Call people that know that school or are around that school that can give you information. Without being creepy, you also want to stalk the people that are going to interview you and find out information about them. You know, and so you can bring that up in an interview a lot of times. You can talk about the school. You can talk about how they were successful, 5 years ago with so-and-so coach. And when you start showing that you've done your research and you have some information inside of the interview room, that's going to help you tremendously. You also want to make sure that you've written down questions that you want to ask them, specific questions to them. Everyone wants to know what you're going to get paid, so don't be afraid and ask it. That's awesome, but it doesn't need to be the first thing you ask. You need to ask questions that are specific about them. Why do you think you guys struggled? One of the questions that I'm stealing is that I think coaches can win games, but I think administrations are really what drives the school. So what are you guys going to do to help the football program? What are you going to put behind it? What is your philosophy on, ask them the questions you want to know. A lot of times the first time you're in an interview room, you're intimidated, but the reality is they're interviewing you, but you also need to come across like you're also interviewing them. You don't want to come across as desperate. Please give me a job. I'll take it. I have no questions. I'll do whatever. Because even if you get that job, it's probably not a very good job. So you need to ask those questions up front. You don't need to be rude or ugly or arrogant. That's not what I'm suggesting. But being confident in who you are and making sure you're genuine. So the last part about before the interview part is to make sure that you have all of your materials ready. So you're going to walk in there with your portfolio. I know you've emailed it to them already and they should have it. You need to know how many people are going to be in the room interviewing you. So it's fair to ask that up front. Once you get an interview, you want to call whoever's going to be doing the interview and just ask them how many people will be in the room. And I'm going to have a packet for every single one of those people, whatever I can bring. I'll bring media guides that we did where we were. I'll bring anything I can that's going to make me look good, as well as the portfolio stuff I've already talked about. And I'll have it in a hard copy. Here you go, sir. Here you go, ma'am. That way they've got it for when you leave the room. anything you can do again to brand yourself or to make yourself look as professional as possible. So do some work on the front end so you're ready to get in there in the interview. Okay, in this section, we'll talk about dressing for an interview, which is something that it's awkward. I'm a football coach. I'm wearing a hoodie right now. So clearly dressing is not my forte. However, I am married and I have a wife who can help me in that area. But dressing for an interview is important. When you're going to interview, realize who you're going to interview with. You're not going to interview with Coach Simpson, who doesn't care really what you wear as long as it matches, and you're not wearing like real short shorts. I don't care. You're going to interview with people that have master's degrees, specialist degrees, and people that have obviously worked up the professional chain that are probably going to be wearing suits and ties or extremely nice, whatever lady business attire would be. You don't want to be the worst dressed in the room. You want to make sure that you have a sport coat and you have a tie and you have a collared shirt and you have some type of dress pants. Do not wear sneakers. If you're going to interview for a head football coaching position, wear a belt. And these are little things that I would think probably don't need to be said, but I remember me at 27 probably needed that said to him. And it would be good if you could wear the colors of the school you're going to interview for. You're going to interview for a school that's wearing red and white, try to find a red tie. Very simple, subtle things, good conversation starters, just little things that matter. If you've won a state championship, this is the time to wear the ring. It may bring up a conversation. You don't have to bring it up, but a lot of times if you're wearing the ring, they'll bring it up. So this is the time to do that. You want to make sure, though, that you are dressed appropriately for the school you're going into. When I go to school now, because of the clientele of kids that we have, I try not to dress super, super professional because that doesn't really fit our kids. But when I came to interview, I sure did. I wanted to make sure that I looked as nice as possible. So when you go into interview, it does matter. Dress shoes, shirt and tie, make sure it looks nice. Spend a little bit of money, guys, on making sure you've got some kind of something nice to wear. Because when you walk in, people can say all they want, but your first impression when you walk in that door is going to matter. And they're not going to hire you on how good looking you are, fortunately for me, but they are going to hire the person they think represents themselves best. And that's a small part of it, but unfortunately, a lot of times coaches don't quite understand that part. So this section is going to deal with after the interview. So after you've already interviewed, what now? So you go through the interview process, you think you did really well or think you did really awful, whatever happens there, you want to make sure that you send a thank you note to them as quickly as possible. Maybe even have it written before you go and drop it in the mail and it gets to them. Something about notes that do mean more than texts or calls. Nothing wrong with giving them a call or a text, but giving them a thank you note just for the opportunity to interview, that you appreciate them, it goes a long way. And whether you get that job or not, one of those administrators may end up at another school one day and you want them to appreciate who you are. So kind of a side note here also, don't ever burn a bridge on an interview. You may not have got the job because of whatever reason, but those guys are still administrators and they may be somewhere else later and you need them to, you want to have a good experience. They also talk to other administrators. So this guy had a great interview. We went a different direction for whatever reason, but y'all need to look at him. So always, no matter what happens, if you get the job or don't get the job, don't burn down that bridge because you want to make sure it's always available and you're gracious. One day you may be in their shoes having to make a really tough choice, and it's just a difficult situation at times. You also want to make sure that when you leave the interview, so kind of during the interview, at some point your question deals with what is your timeline, and so that you have an idea of, are they going to have another round of interviews? Are they going to make a final decision? How are they going to work it? So I'm not sitting there just kind of lingering with not knowing if I got the job or not, because you don't want to blow people up, but you also don't want to be sitting there waiting on different things. So always ask that. And what I've learned as a general sign is if you don't hear from them by the timeline, you weren't number one choice. It doesn't mean you're not going to get the job, but you weren't the number one guy. Sometimes silence is an answer, unfortunately. But as you leave the interview, write them a thank you note, shoot them a text, do as many things as you can, but you don't want to continue to harass them. You just want to tell them thank you. And then when they want to come to you, you'll get that job. You don't want to continue bugging them because that's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. And then if you don't get the interview, even another text, hey, I just really want to, I appreciate the opportunity for whatever it is. Because, in the short term, that hurts, but down the road, you may have another opportunity there and you don't want to burn that bridge. All right, a couple final thoughts, guys, about getting the job and being a head coach. One is not to be somebody that's going to just preach to you, but sometimes not getting a job can be the best thing. And so I know it kind of stinks when that happens, but I'm a big believer that God has a plan for us. And when it is our time, it'll be our time. And I've probably been very fortunate on a lot of the jobs that I did not get. And so, don't think that's the end of the world if you don't get a job or get an interview. I felt at times I've been super qualified to get a job and didn't even get a sniff at an interview. And I felt at times that there are guys way better than me, but they hired me. And so it can be odd, it can be different, it can be tough, but I would heavily encourage you to stay genuine to who you are. People will be attracted to you or not, and if they're not attracted to you, you don't want that job. So be who you are, be genuine in the interview process, be genuine to anyone you're around. That's just kind of a life lesson. Is be who you are. If you're a nerdy guy, be a nerdy guy. That's fine. If you're a big hulky guy that played college football, that's awesome. Play that up too. But be who you are. And if the school doesn't want you for that, you don't really want to go there anyway. So don't get so upset by that. A couple other thoughts about getting a job too is you need to have an idea of how you're going to handle coaches. Like, how are you going to rank coaches? How are you going to bring guys in? Do you have enough of a network where you can bring guys in with you that would want to come work with you and have those conversations? Because a lot of times you get a job, you need to have a good staff, and that's going to be a question you may face. So who are people that maybe you would love to work with or have work for you? Kind of have a plan of action on that stuff. I hit a lot of this stuff, guys, in my book, and obviously as we move through the rest of this course, we're going to talk about the other parts of being a head coach. But one of the toughest parts most of the time is getting that first job. And last thing I'll leave you with is this: don't become a head coach just to be a head coach and take a job that's not good. I've seen too many young guys get in really no-win situations by the job they went in. Kids always need a coach, and so I'm never going to say a job's a terrible job as far as working with the kids. But there are some jobs that you're not going to be successful. And so you need to understand, going for some of these jobs, why are they open every year? What are some of the issues they're dealing with? And then if you still believe I can overcome that after that, go for it. But understand that one thing I've learned as I've gone is there's a lot of other really smart guys in this business. And if you haven't been let go as a coach yet, or thought you weren't real smart as a coach yet, wait, because it's going to happen. And so don't think that just because you're a smart guy, you can go in and fix something. So anyway, just be aware of the job you're walking into. And guys, hope you've got something from this. I'll have plenty of other series coming along with this. Becoming a head coach is just the first step. So the next video that I'll be putting out, we'll be talking about now you have the job. So now what are you going to do with it? And hopefully you get something from it. Here again is my contact info. Please reach out to me if you've got any questions after watching this. I'd love to help young coaches, and reach out to me through any of these means, and I'll get back as quick as possible.